They weren't searching for prophecy, they were chasing stars, charting the unknown. But buried beneath the ash of a long-dead world, Captain Zara Chen and her crew found something older than time. Thousands of warnings from civilizations long extinct. All of them said the same thing: stay away from one place, Earth. Now, as impossible ships rise from the shadows of space and ancient beings awaken, the truth emerges. Humanity was never alone. We were being watched, tested, prepared. And the final exam has just begun. The discovery of the lost records. The exploration vessel Horizon's Edge drifted silently through the void of the Kepler 442 system, its hull scarred from months of deep space travel. Captain Zara Chen stood on the bridge, her dark eyes scanning the tactical display that showed the dead world rotating slowly before them. The planet had once been home to an advanced civilization, but now it was nothing more than a tomb of twisted metal and crystallized sand. "Captain, we're detecting some unusual energy readings from the northern continent," reported Communications Officer Aiden Park, his fingers dancing across the holographic interface. The young man's voice carried a hint of excitement that he tried to suppress. After 3 months of cataloging empty worlds and dead civilizations, any anomaly was worth investigating. Dr. Marcus Webb, the team's lead archaeologist, leaned forward in his chair. His weathered face showed the enthusiasm of a man who had spent his life uncovering the secrets of lost worlds. The energy signature is consistent with preserved data storage systems. Whatever civilization lived here, they might have left something behind. Captain Chen nodded slowly. At 35, she had already led more deep space expeditions than most captains twice her age. Her reputation for finding valuable discoveries in the most unlikely places had earned her this mission. "Rosa, what's the status of our landing systems?" Engineer Rosa Martinez looked up from her diagnostic panel, her oil-stained fingers still working on calibrating the atmospheric processors. "All systems green, Captain. The planet's atmosphere is thin but breathable with suits. Gravity is about 80% of Earth normal." "Jake, prep the shuttle," Chen ordered. Pilot Jake Thompson was already moving toward the shuttle bay before she finished speaking. The man had an uncanny ability to anticipate orders, a skill that had saved their lives more than once during this expedition. 20 minutes later, the landing party touched down on the surface of the dead world. The landscape stretched endlessly in all directions, covered in what looked like glass formations that caught and reflected the light of the distant star. The remains of enormous structures jutted from the ground like the bones of some massive creature, their original purpose lost to time. Dr. Webb consulted his scanner as they walked toward the source of the energy readings. The civilization here was incredibly advanced. These glass formations aren't natural. They're the remains of their cities, somehow crystallized during whatever catastrophe destroyed them. The energy source led them to what had once been a massive building, now partially buried under centuries of accumulated dust and debris. At its center stood a towering spire made of the same crystalline material as the surrounding landscape, but this one pulsed with a soft blue light. "It's some kind of archive," Webb breathed, his scanner detecting vast amounts of stored information. "The power source is unlike anything I've ever seen. It's been running for thousands of years without any maintenance." Captain Chen approached the spire cautiously. As her gloved hand touched its surface, the crystalline structure responded. Panels of light began appearing in the air around them, each one displaying symbols and images from various alien civilizations. "My God," whispered Aiden, his translation software working frantically to decode the flood of information. "Captain, these aren't just records from this civilization. This is a collection of warnings from dozens of different species, maybe hundreds." The holographic displays continued to multiply, filling the air with messages in languages that spanned the galaxy. Some were written in flowing scripts that seemed to move like living things. Others were geometric patterns that hurt to look at directly. Still others were composed of pure mathematics that somehow conveyed emotion. Dr. Webb's scanner was recording everything, but even he seemed overwhelmed by the sheer volume of data. The timestamps on these messages span millions of years. Some of these civilizations are older than anything we've ever discovered. "What are they warning about?" Chen asked, though part of her already suspected the answer would be something she wouldn't want to hear. Aiden's face had gone pale as his translation programs began making sense of the messages. "Captain, they're all warning about the same thing, a sector of space that they call the Forbidden Zone. They're warning other species to stay away from it at all costs." "Which sector?" Chen's voice was steady, but her heart was beginning to race. The young communications officer looked up at her with wide eyes. "Our sector, Captain. They're warning about the Sol system. They're warning about Earth." The silence that followed was broken only by the soft humming of their life support systems. Rosa was the first to speak, her practical engineering mind trying to make sense of what they were hearing. That doesn't make sense. Earth is just a planet. We're not dangerous to anyone. But Dr. Webb was already deep in the translated messages, his face growing more concerned with each line he read. Listen to this one. It's from a species that calls itself the Corvani. We watch them from afar, these creatures of the blue world. They fight each other with a ferocity that would terrify the fiercest predators. They poison their own air and water, yet they survive. They split the very atoms of matter and use them as weapons, yet they do not destroy themselves. They are not natural. Something made them this way. Captain Chen felt a chill run down her spine. Read another one. This is from the Gel Collective, dated about 50,000 years ago, Webb continued. The Watchers have chosen their world well. The creatures there adapt to any challenge, overcome any obstacle. We have seen them survive ice ages, volcanic eruptions, and plagues that would extinct entire star systems. They are being prepared for something. We dare not interfere with the Watchers' experiment. Aiden's hands were shaking as he pulled up more messages. Captain, there are thousands of these warnings. Some species mention the final test and the Watchers. Others talk about something called the Great Preparation. But they all agree on one thing. Humanity isn't supposed to exist naturally. Engineer Martinez stood up abruptly, pacing away from the group. This is insane. You're telling me that aliens have been watching us for millions of years? That we're some kind of experiment? It gets worse, Dr. Webb said quietly. Several of these messages mention something approaching from outside the galaxy. They call it the Hunger or the Devourers. According to these records, entire galactic civilizations have been consumed by it, and apparently, whoever these Watchers are, they've been preparing Earth as some kind of response to this threat. Captain Chen stared at the swirling holographic messages around them. Thousands of alien civilizations, spanning millions of years, all warning about the same thing, all afraid of humanity and what they might represent. Captain, Aiden said urgently, I'm detecting multiple energy signatures moving toward our sector, big ones. Whatever's been watching us, I think they know we found this archive. The crystalline spire suddenly pulsed brighter, and new messages began appearing. These ones were different, more recent, more urgent. These messages are only a few years old, Webb reported, from species that still exist. Listen to this. The Watchers stir. The final test approaches. The children of the blue world must be ready, for the hunger comes. May the galaxy forgive us for what we have allowed to grow. Rosa had stopped pacing and was staring at her scanner. Captain, we need to leave, now. I'm detecting massive gravitational distortions throughout this system. Something big is moving through space and it's headed for our position. But Captain Chen was still reading the messages, her mind racing to understand the implications. If these warnings were true, then humanity wasn't just another species exploring the galaxy. They were something else entirely, something that had been shaped and molded by forces beyond their understanding, something that was about to face a test that would determine the fate of the entire galaxy. Captain, Jake's voice crackled over the comm from the shuttle. We've got company, multiple contacts dropping out of hyperspace. These ships are enormous and they're not using any technology I recognize. Through the crystalline structure's walls they could see lights appearing in the sky. Not the familiar points of stars, but something else. Something that seemed to bend space around itself as it moved. Download everything you can, Chen ordered. We need to get back to Earth and warn them. If these messages are true, then humanity is about to face something we never prepared for. As they rushed back to their shuttle, the dead world around them began to change. The crystalline formation started glowing brighter, as if responding to the approaching ships. In the distance, structures that had been buried for millennia began rising from the ground, their surfaces alive with patterns of light. The whole planet is awakening, Dr. Webb gasped as they ran. It's not just an archive, it's some kind of beacon. They reached the shuttle just as the first of the massive ships became visible in the sky above them. It was unlike anything in human experience, a structure that seemed to be made of folded space itself, its surface rippling like water. As they watched, more ships appeared, each one larger than the last. Get us back to the horizon's edge, Chen ordered as they strapped in. Maximum burn, we need to reach Earth before they do. But as their shuttle lifted off from the surface of the dead world, Captain Chen couldn't shake the feeling that they were already too late. Whatever test humanity was about to face, it had already begun. The ancient warnings echoed in her mind as they raced through space toward home. For millions of years, alien civilizations had watched and waited. They had left their warnings for others to find, but none had dared to interfere. Now the Watchers were returning, and humanity was about to discover what they had been created to face. The question was no longer whether the warnings were true. The question was whether humanity would survive what was coming. Behind them, the dead world pulsed with increasing intensity, its ancient beacon calling out across the galaxy. The message was simple and terrifying. The final test had begun. When ancient guardians return. The horizon's edge tore through hyperspace at maximum velocity, its engines straining against the laws of physics as Captain Chen pushed the ship beyond its design limits. 3 days had passed since they escaped the dead world in the Kepler system, and every hour brought them closer to home. But it also brought the mysterious fleet closer to Earth. "Captain, we're receiving priority communications from Earth Defense Command," Aiden reported from his station. His face was tense with concentration as he filtered through the flood of messages. "They're detecting massive gravitational anomalies throughout the solar system. Whatever's following us, they're already there." Dr. Webb looked up from the alien archive data he had been studying non-stop since their escape. His eyes were bloodshot from lack of sleep, but his voice carried the weight of terrible knowledge. "According to these records, the Watchers have bases hidden throughout our solar system. They've been there for millions of years, waiting." Captain Chen stared at the tactical display showing their approach to Earth. The blue marble that had been humanity's home for countless generations now seemed small and vulnerable against the vast darkness of space. "How long until we drop out of hyperspace?" 6 hours, Captain," Jake replied from the pilot's seat. His hands moved constantly over the controls, making minute adjustments to squeeze every bit of speed from their engines. "But I'm detecting some kind of interference ahead. Space itself seems to be changing." Through the forward viewports, they could see it. Reality appeared to ripple like water, and stars seemed to bend and twist in impossible ways. The very fabric of space-time was being manipulated by forces beyond human understanding. "Emergency drop to normal space," Chen ordered. "I want to see what we're dealing with." The horizon's edge shuddered as it fell out of hyperspace, and immediately their sensors went wild. The space around Earth was filled with structures that hadn't been there before. Massive crystalline ships, each one the size of a small moon, hung in perfect formation around the planet. Their surfaces pulsed with the same blue light they had seen in the archive. "My God," Rosa whispered, her engineering mind struggling to comprehend the technology before them. "Those ships aren't just big, they're altering local space-time. That's how they stayed hidden all these years." But it wasn't just the ships that had changed. Earth itself looked different. Aurora-like lights danced across its surface, and patterns of energy connected the crystalline vessels to specific points on the planet. Ancient sites that humanity had always considered mysterious, Stonehenge, the pyramids, Easter Island, were now revealed as part of a vast network. "Captain, we're being hailed," Aiden announced. "The signal is unlike anything I've ever seen. It's not electromagnetic radiation, it's something else entirely." "Put it through," Chen ordered. Part 2. When Ancient Guardians Return. The horizon's edge tore through hyperspace at maximum velocity, its engines straining against the laws of physics as Captain Chen pushed the ship beyond its design limits. 3 days had passed since they escaped the dead world in the Kepler system, and every hour brought them closer to home, but it also brought the mysterious fleet closer to Earth. "Captain, we're receiving priority communications from Earth Defense Command," Aiden reported from his station. His face was tense with concentration as he filtered through the flood of messages. "They're detecting massive gravitational anomalies throughout the solar system. Whatever's following us, they're already there." Dr. Webb looked up from the alien archive data he had been studying non-stop since their escape. His eyes were bloodshot from lack of sleep, but his voice carried the weight of terrible knowledge. "According to these records, the Watchers have bases hidden throughout our solar system. They've been there for millions of years, waiting." Captain Chen stared at the tactical display showing their approach to Earth. The blue marble that had been humanity's home for countless generations now seemed small and vulnerable against the vast darkness of space. "How long until we drop out of hyperspace?" 6 hours, Captain, Jake replied from the pilot's seat. His hands moved constantly over the controls, making minute adjustments to squeeze every bit of speed from their engines. "But I'm detecting some kind of interference ahead. Space itself seems to be changing." Through the forward viewports, they could see it. Reality appeared to ripple like water, and stars seemed to bend and twist in impossible ways. The very fabric of space-time was being manipulated by forces beyond human understanding. "Emergency drop to normal space," Chen ordered. "I want to see what we're dealing with." The horizon's edge shuddered as it fell out of hyperspace, and immediately their sensors went wild. The space around Earth was filled with structures that hadn't been there before. Massive crystalline ships, each one the size of a small moon, hung in perfect formation around the planet. Their surfaces pulsed with the same blue light they had seen in the archive. "My God," Rosa whispered, her engineering mind struggling to comprehend the technology before them. Those ships aren't just big, they're altering local space-time. That's how they stayed hidden all these years. But it wasn't just the ships that had changed. Earth itself looked different. Aurora-like lights danced across its surface, and patterns of energy connected the crystalline vessels to specific points on the planet. Ancient sites that humanity had always considered mysterious, Stonehenge, the pyramids, Easter Island, were now revealed as part of a vast network. "Captain, we're being hailed," Aiden announced. "The signal is unlike anything I've ever seen. It's not electromagnetic radiation. It's something else entirely." "Put it through," Chen ordered. The bridge filled with a presence that was both alien and ancient. When the being spoke, its voice seemed to come from everywhere at once, resonating not just in their ears but in their very bones. "Children of the blue world," the voice said, and somehow they all understood it perfectly despite it being in no language that had ever existed on Earth. "We are the architects of your destiny. We have watched you grow from primitive hunters to explorers of the stars. The time of preparation is complete." Captain Chen stepped forward, her military training helping her maintain composure in the face of the impossible. "Who are you? What do you want with humanity?" "We are the last survivors of the first galaxy," the being replied. "Long ago, we faced the hunger that devours all things. Our civilization spanned 1,000,000 worlds, yet we could not stand against it. But before we fell, we planted seeds, worlds like yours, shaped and guided to produce something that could succeed where we failed." The holographic displays on the bridge came alive with images from Earth's history, but these weren't the events as humanity understood them. These showed the hidden hands that had guided human development, ice ages that had forced adaptation, catastrophes that had selected for resilience, wars that had taught cooperation through conflict. "You created us?" Chen asked, though she already knew the answer. "We guided you," the architect corrected. "The raw material was already there. Humans possess something rare in the galaxy. The ability to adapt, to overcome, to inspire others to be better than they are. Most species, when faced with extinction, simply die. Humans fight. They find ways to survive that no other species would even consider." Dr. Webb had been recording everything, his archaeological instincts driving him to document this moment for future generations. "The warnings we found, the other species that feared us, they knew what you were doing? Some suspected, others observed and fled in terror. Your species fights wars with weapons that could destroy your planet, yet you choose not to. You poison your environment, then develop technologies to heal it. You are contradictions that somehow work. This is what we needed." Engineer Martinez looked up from her console, her face pale. "Captain, I'm detecting multiple hyperspace breaches throughout the system. Something else is coming." The space around Earth suddenly filled with new arrivals. These ships were different from the crystalline vessels of the architects. They were organic, twisted things that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. As they emerged from hyperspace, the very space around them began to wither and die. "The Devourers," the architect's voice carried a note of ancient fear. "They have found you sooner than we anticipated. The final test begins now." The bridge crew of the Horizon's Edge watched in horror as the organic ships began moving toward Earth. But as they approached, something unexpected happened. Earth's defense networks, systems that no one had known existed, suddenly came online. Ancient installations hidden beneath the ocean floors and in the depths of mountain ranges revealed themselves, their weapons charging with energies that made fusion power look primitive. "Earth Defense Command to all vessels," came a broadcast from the planet's surface. "This is Admiral Sarah Chen." Captain Chen started. That was her sister's voice. "We are under attack by unknown hostiles. All available ships form defensive perimeters around major population centers." But the human response was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Within minutes, every space-capable vessel in the system had joined the fight. Military ships, cargo haulers, mining platforms, even civilian shuttles modified with improvised weapons. Humanity wasn't just defending their world. They were doing it with a creativity and determination that defied logic. "Look at them," the architect's voice carried something that might have been wonder. "They turn farming equipment into weapons. They use their cargo ships as rams. They coordinate without central command, adapting their tactics in real time." The battle raged around Earth as the Devourer scouts tested humanity's defenses. But every time the alien ships adapted to human tactics, the humans changed their approach. They used their own destroyed vessels as improvised missiles. They coordinated attacks through methods the Devourers couldn't intercept. They even began copying the aliens' technology in the middle of battle, turning captured weapons against their former owners. Captain Chen watched the tactical display with growing amazement. "They're learning faster than the Devourers can adapt." This is why we chose your species, the architect explained. Most civilizations fight to preserve what they have. Humans fight to create something better. Watch. On the display, they could see human ships beginning to work in coordination with the architect vessels. Without any formal communication, human pilots were interpreting the aliens' movements and supporting their attacks. The two fleets began to move as one, their combined tactics overwhelming the Devourer scouts. Dr. Webb was frantically taking notes, his historian's mind recognizing this as perhaps the most important moment in human history. They're not just fighting together, they're learning from each other. Yes, the architect agreed. This is what we had hoped for but never dared expect. Your species doesn't just adapt, you cause others to adapt as well, you inspire. The last of the Devourer scouts was destroyed, but the victory celebration was short-lived. Space itself began to darken as something massive approached from the void between galaxies. This wasn't a scouting force, this was the true enemy, vast beyond comprehension. The hunger comes, the architect said, and for the first time, its voice carried hope alongside the fear. But you are not alone. The test has begun, and you have not failed. Other species throughout the galaxy have been watching this battle. They see what you have done here today. As if summoned by the architect's words, new ships began emerging from hyperspace throughout the solar system. Species that had hidden in fear for millennia were now revealing themselves, drawn by humanity's example. The battle had become something more than just survival. It had become a rally cry for every free species in the galaxy. Captain Chen looked around at her crew. They were exhausted, frightened, but also exhilarated. They had witnessed something unprecedented, the moment when humanity stepped forward to lead the galaxy against its greatest threat. What happens now? She asked. Now, the architect replied, you show the galaxy what it truly means to be human. The real battle is just beginning, but for the first time in a million years, we have hope. Through the viewports of the horizon's edge, they could see Earth surrounded by the combined fleets of dozens of species, all united under humanity's inexplicable ability to inspire courage in others. The blue marble at the center of it all seemed to pulse with new purpose, as if the planet itself was awakening to its destiny. The final test was about to begin, and humanity would face it not as a single species, but as the leaders of a galactic alliance forged in the crucible of battle. Whatever came next, they would meet it together, Deathworlders united. The darkness between galaxies began to move. What had seemed like empty void revealed itself as something far more terrifying, a living entropy that consumed everything in its path. The Devourer fleet stretched across light years of space, each ship a writhing mass of organic technology that fed on the very concept of existence itself. Captain Chen stood on the bridge of the horizon's edge, now serving as humanity's liaison to the combined galactic fleet. Around Earth, representatives from 47 different species had gathered, their ships forming defensive formations that would have been impossible just days before. The sight was both beautiful and heartbreaking. So many civilizations finally united, but perhaps too late. Captain, we're receiving tactical data from all allied fleets, Aiden reported. His translation systems were working overtime, converting dozens of alien languages into something the human command structure could understand. The species diversity is incredible. We have energy beings from the Andromeda Spiral, silicon-based life forms that exist in gas giant atmospheres, and machine intelligences older than our solar system. Dr. Webb had not slept in 2 days, his mind consumed with analyzing the cultural and historical implications of what they were witnessing. This has never happened before in galactic history. Every previous encounter with the Devourers resulted in species fleeing to opposite ends of the galaxy. No one has ever tried to make a stand. Engineer Martinez looked up from her console, where she had been coordinating with alien engineers to integrate human technology with their advanced systems. Captain, the architects are sharing their weapon specifications with us. Some of these technologies are beyond anything we dreamed possible, but they're asking us to do something in return. What do they want? Chen asked. They want us to take command, Rosa replied, her voice filled with disbelief. Not just of the human fleet, but of the entire alliance. They're saying that every species here is following humanity's lead. Through the communication system, the architect's voice filled the bridge once more. Children of the Blue World, the other species have asked us to explain why they look to you for leadership. It is because you possess something they have forgotten, the ability to see hope where others see only extinction. On the main display, they could watch as human commanders worked with alien tacticians, their different approaches to warfare creating strategies neither could have developed alone. Human creativity combined with alien technology. Human determination merged with alien wisdom. It was creating something entirely new. The Zalani Collective has mastered energy manipulation, but lacks tactical flexibility, the architect continued. The Corvani Empire has weapons that can crack planets but cannot adapt when their plans fail. The Theiss Federation can shield entire star systems but becomes paralyzed when forced to attack. Each species has incredible abilities, but they have specialized themselves into corners. Humans remain generalists, good at everything, masters of adaptation. Captain Chen watched as her sister's voice came through the communications array from Earth Defense Command. Admiral Sarah Chen was coordinating not just human forces but alien reinforcements as well, treating each species' unique capabilities as tools in humanity's arsenal of hope. "All ships, this is Admiral Chen," came the broadcast. "The enemy vanguard will reach our perimeter in 6 hours. I know many of you have never fought alongside other species before. I know some of you have been enemies for millennia. But today, we're not fighting as separate civilizations. We're fighting as one people, defending one home. Earth isn't just humanity's world anymore. It's the symbol of what we can accomplish together." The response was immediate and overwhelming. Alien species that had never spoken to each other began coordinating attacks. Ancient enemies found themselves fighting side by side. The communication channels filled with languages from across the galaxy, but somehow, everyone understood everyone else. It was as if humanity's presence was acting as a universal translator for more than just words. It was translating hope itself. Dr. Webb's eyes widened as he monitored the cultural exchanges happening in real time. "Captain, something extraordinary is happening. The different species aren't just cooperating, they're changing. The rigid hierarchical species are becoming more flexible. The individualistic ones are learning to work as teams. It's like humanity is acting as a catalyst for galactic evolution." The first wave of Devourer ships entered the solar system, and the battle began. But this was unlike any conflict in galactic history. Instead of each species fighting according to their traditional methods, they began adapting human tactics in real time. The energy beings learned to use guerrilla warfare. The machine intelligences began employing creativity rather than pure logic. The hive minds started thinking as individuals. "Look at this," Rosa called out, pointing to her engineering display. "The Theiss are sharing their shield technology, but they're modifying it based on human suggestions. Instead of static barriers, they're creating adaptive defensive matrices that respond to different types of attacks." Jake, monitoring the pilot communications, shook his head in wonder. "The Corvani have never used formation flying before. Their culture doesn't allow for that kind of cooperation, but they're learning from our fighter pilots. They're actually having fun with it." The battle raged for hours, but gradually a pattern emerged. The Devourer ships, for all their terrifying power, were predictable. They consumed and adapted, but they did so according to fixed patterns developed over millions of years. The Galactic Alliance, inspired by human unpredictability, began to break those patterns. "Captain," Aiden announced urgently, "we're receiving a communication from deep within the Devourer fleet. It's coming from other species. Survivors." The message that came through was weak and fragmented, but its meaning was clear. Throughout their conquest of the galaxy, the Devourers had not completely destroyed every civilization they encountered. They had kept some alive, using them as living batteries to power their ships. "They're asking for rescue," Dr. Webb translated, tears streaming down his face. "Hundreds of species, kept alive in agony for millions of years, being used as fuel for the Devourer fleet." Captain Chen felt something ignite in her chest, not just anger, but a righteous fury that seemed to spread through the communication network to every ship in the Alliance. This was no longer just about survival, this was about liberation. "All ships," she broadcast on the Alliance frequency, "we've just learned that the Devourers are holding prisoners, entire civilizations enslaved within their ships. We're not just fighting for our freedom anymore, we're fighting to free every species they've ever captured." The response was immediate and dramatic. Ships that had been fighting defensively suddenly went on the attack. The Corvani, who had been carefully conserving their planet-cracking weapons, began firing them directly into the hearts of Devourer vessels. The Theiss dropped their shields and charged forward. The energy beings formed themselves into weapons of pure destruction. But it was the humans who led the charge. Captain Chen found herself commanding not just the horizon's edge, but a strike force composed of the fastest ships from every species. Their mission was impossible: penetrate the heart of the Devourer fleet and begin rescue operations while the battle still raged. "Jake, take us in," she ordered, "full speed toward the largest Devourer ship." As they raced through the battle zone, Chen watched her crew work with an efficiency born of desperation and hope. Dr. Webb was coordinating with alien archaeologists to understand Devourer's ship layouts. Rosa was adapting their weapon systems in real time based on intelligence from species that had faced the Devourers before. Aiden was maintaining communications with dozens of ships despite jamming that should have made it impossible. They reached the primary Devourer vessel, a writhing mass of organic technology the size of a small moon. As they approached, they could see the enslaved species connected to the ship's systems, their life force being drained to power weapons of destruction. There, Dr. Webb pointed to a section of the ship that pulsed differently from the rest. According to the survivors' transmissions, that's where they're holding the most recent captives. The rescue operation that followed defied every rule of space combat. Human ships acted as shields while alien vessels used precision weapons to cut through the Devourer ship's hull without harming the prisoners inside. Species that had been enemies for generations worked together with perfect coordination, united by a common purpose that transcended their ancient differences. As they freed ship after ship full of enslaved beings, something began to happen to the Devourer fleet. The massive vessels began to falter, their movements becoming erratic. The realization hit Dr. Webb first. "Captain, they're not just using the prisoners as batteries," he announced. "They're using them as processing power. The enslaved minds have been running the Devourer ship's tactical systems for millions of years. As we free them, the Devourers are losing their ability to coordinate." The tide of battle turned. The Devourer fleet, deprived of their enslaved minds, began making mistakes. Ships collided with each other, weapons fired at empty space. The perfect coordination that had allowed them to consume galaxies was falling apart. But the greatest change was happening to the Galactic Alliance itself. As they worked together to free the enslaved species, barriers that had existed for millennia began to dissolve. The rescued beings, instead of fleeing, joined the fight. Former enemies became eternal allies. Species that had never met before found themselves fighting as if they had trained together for decades. "Captain," the architect's voice came through the communication system, but now it carried something new: joy. "You have accomplished something we never thought possible. You have not just defeated the Devourers, you have created something entirely new, a true galactic civilization united not by conquest or fear, but by hope." As the last of the Devourer ships fell, Captain Chen looked around at her crew. They were exhausted, battered, but triumphant. Through the viewports, she could see the combined fleet, thousands of ships from hundreds of species, all flying in formation around Earth. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now," the architect replied, "the real work begins. You have shown the galaxy what is possible when different species work together. Earth will become the capital of this new alliance, and humanity will guide the galaxy into an age of exploration and growth that will make the old civilization seem primitive by comparison." Dr. Webb was already documenting everything, knowing that this moment would be studied for millennia to come. "We're not conquerors," he said. "We're gardeners. We help other species grow into something better than they were." Engineer Martinez looked at her displays, which now showed engineering data from dozens of different civilizations. "Think about what we can build together. Technologies that combine the best of every species, ships that can travel between dimensions, worlds that can support any form of life." Pilot Jake was coordinating with alien pilots, planning the first joint exploration missions to other galaxies. "There are so many places to explore, so many new species to meet and help." Communications Officer Aiden was already establishing the framework for the new galactic government, ensuring that every species would have a voice in their shared future. Captain Chen smiled as she looked out at the stars. Humanity had passed the final test, but they had done more than survive. They had shown the galaxy what it meant to hope, to dream, and to fight for something greater than themselves. 6 months later, the transformation was complete. Earth had become the heart of the Galactic Federation, but it remained recognizably human. The blue marble still turned in its ancient orbit, but now it was surrounded by orbital stations where beings from across the galaxy lived and worked together. The planet's surface had been carefully preserved, with alien embassies built in harmony with Earth's natural beauty. Captain Chen now held the title of Galactic Coordinator, but she still preferred to be called simply Captain. She stood in the Federation Council chambers, watching representatives from over 300 species work together to plan their shared future. The chamber itself was a marvel of cooperative engineering, a sphere of living crystal that could adjust its environment to support any form of life, from methane-breathing gas giants to energy beings that existed as pure thought. The first joint colonization mission is ready to depart, reported Ambassador Thais Kaal, a crystalline being whose species had once been so xenophobic they refused to acknowledge other forms of life existed. 300 ships representing 87 different species will establish our first multicultural colony in the Andromeda Galaxy. The irony wasn't lost on Dr. Webb, who now served as the Federation's chief cultural advisor. A year ago, most of these species had never even spoken to each other. Now they were planning to build new worlds together. The terraforming technology is remarkable, added engineer Corvani Zeth, whose people had once solved every problem with overwhelming firepower. By combining Zelani energy manipulation with human environmental science and Thysis shield technology, we can create worlds that support multiple forms of life simultaneously. But perhaps the most significant change was in humanity itself. The species that had once been confined to a single world now served as teachers and guides throughout the galaxy. Human universities had been established on dozens of worlds, not to impose human culture, but to teach the principles of adaptation, creativity, and hope that had made the victory possible. "There's something else," announced the architect, whose crystalline form now served as a permanent advisor to the Federation Council. "We have detected signals from other galaxies. Word of what happened here is spreading. Other alliances are forming, inspired by your example." Captain Chen felt a familiar thrill, the same feeling she had experienced as an explorer discovering new worlds. "Other galaxies want to join the Federation?" "More than that," the architect replied. "They want to learn from you. How to unite different species. How to overcome impossible odds. How to choose hope over fear." The meeting continued for hours, but Chen found her attention drifting to the observation deck where she could see Earth below. The planet looked different now, not just because of the orbital stations, but because of what it represented. It was no longer just humanity's home. It was the symbol of what was possible when different beings chose to work together. Later that evening, Chen returned to the Horizon's Edge, which now served as the flagship of the Federation's exploration fleet. Her original crew had all accepted positions in the new government, but they still gathered regularly aboard their old ship. "Any regrets?" asked Dr. Webb as they shared dinner in the ship's small galley. "A year ago we were simple explorers. Now we're responsible for the future of galactic civilization." Chen considered the question carefully. Through the viewports she could see the lights of 1,000 different worlds represented in the orbital stations around Earth. Each one was a story of survival, adaptation, and hope. "No regrets," she said finally. "We were always explorers. We're just exploring possibilities now instead of planets." Engineer Martinez looked up from the technical manuals she was studying. Engineering texts from a dozen different species, all trying to solve the same basic problems of survival and growth in slightly different ways. "I've been thinking about what the architect said about humans being catalysts. Maybe that's what we're really good at, not just adapting ourselves, but helping others adapt too." Pilot Jake was planning the route for their next mission, a joint exploration of a distant galaxy where initial scouts had detected signs of a massive civilization in distress. "There's so much out there we haven't seen yet, so many people who might need help, or who might have something to teach us." Communications Officer Aiden was monitoring the constant stream of messages flowing between worlds, languages, and species throughout the Federation. "The most amazing thing is how much they're all learning from each other. It's not just humans teaching anymore, everyone's teaching everyone." As if summoned by their conversation, the architect's presence filled the room. "There is something you should know," it said. "We have been monitoring the development of your Federation, comparing it to the civilizations that came before. In 1 year, you have achieved a level of cooperation and technological advancement that took our civilization 10,000 years to reach." "How is that possible?" Chen asked. "Because you never forgot that diversity is strength," the architect replied. "Every previous galactic civilization eventually became homogeneous, all species thinking alike, acting alike, solving problems in the same ways. You have kept your differences while learning to work together. You are stronger because you are different, not in spite of it." Dr. Webb nodded slowly. "That's what the warnings were really about, wasn't it? Not that humans were dangerous, but that we represented something genuinely new, a species that could unite others without conquering them." "Precisely," the architect confirmed. "And now you face your greatest challenge yet. You must teach other galaxies what you have learned here, help them form their own federations, their own alliances. The universe is vast, and there are threats out there that make the Devourers seem small by comparison." Captain Chen stood and walked to the viewport, looking out at the stars. Each point of light represented countless worlds, countless species, countless possibilities for cooperation or conflict. "Then we better get started," she said. "The universe isn't going to explore itself." As the Horizon's Edge prepared for its next mission, carrying representatives from dozens of species to make contact with distant galaxies, Chen reflected on how much had changed. A year ago, humanity had been alone in the universe, struggling to understand their place among the stars. Now they knew their purpose. They were the gardeners of galactic civilization, helping other species grow and flourish while learning from them in return. They were the bridge builders, connecting different forms of life in ways that made everyone stronger. Most importantly, they were the hope carriers, spreading the message that no challenge was too great when faced together, no difference too vast to overcome with understanding and cooperation. The final test had ended, but the real adventure was just beginning. And for the first time in the galaxy's history, every species faced that adventure together, united not by fear or conquest, but by the simple human belief that tomorrow could always be better than today. The universe was vast and full of wonders, and humanity would explore it all, not as conquerors but as friends, teachers, and eternal students in the greatest school of all, the infinite cosmos itself.